Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Terrian. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson,
Here.
Commissioner Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Meadows,
Here.
Commissioner/Representative Noack,
Here.
Commissioner Sauce,
Here.
Commissioner alternate Stepper,
Here.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Here.
Commissioner alternate Xavier,
Here.
Vice Chair Arnrich,
Here.
Chair Glover,
Here.
Representative Foley,
Present.
Representative Peoples is absent, and Commissioner Haskew is absent. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all please mute your mic if attending remotely? And everyone else, if you would rise, and I would ask that leaders of the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey. Our next item on the agenda is public comments, opportunities for members of the public to address the authority on things that falls within the purview but is not on today's agenda. And I will check in with Chair Ed. Do we have any written correspondence or comments? Or anybody calling remotely?
No written or verbal comments,
Okay, anyone in?
just staff and consultants. And Commissioner Fideli.
And there's no one in the room tonight. Okay. So next we will move on. Next item is the consent calendar. Is there any authority member wishing to move or comment on the consent calendar?
I'll move that. I'll second it.
Okay, we'll take the motions, but we'll check in and see if there's anybody from the public. Anybody remotely.
No virtual or written public comment.
Okay, so we have a motion by Noack, second by Kelly. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows,
Yes.
Commissioner Noack,
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce,
Yes.
Commissioner Stepper,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Commissioner Xavier,
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnrich,
Aye.
Chair Glover.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Haskew absent.
Okay, moving along to regular agenda items, first being 8A, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna ask that first action will be presented by Stephanie on the 2024 State Transportation Improvement Program process review and call for projects. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hello. Oh, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Just checking the mic works. My name is Stephanie Hu, Director of Projects with the Authority, and this is an action item that occurs every 2 years related to the State Transportation Improvements Program, or STIP. Staff is seeking your approval for the 2024 STIP call for projects this evening. Just a little bit background on the STIP. Every 2 years, the California Transportation Commission adopts a 5-year STIP. Each new STIP cycle adds 2 new years to the prior programming commitments. The 2024 STIP covers a 5-year period between fiscal year 24-25 and fiscal year 2028. It will add programming of funds for the latter 2 years of fiscal year 27-28 and 28-29. The exact amount won't be known until the CTC releases the draft fund estimates in June, with the final fund estimate approval in August. In past STIP cycles, the authority had program funding for transportation projects that enhance safety, improve operations, improve transit facilities, and also to construct pet bike improvements. Project priorities for each county are due to the MTC in October, and in order to meet this schedule, staff is recommending releasing the 2024 STIP call for projects later this week. After your approval today, staff took the screening and scoring criteria to the Technical Coordinating Committee, or the TCC, for their review and comments in March. The TCC had minor comments, which staff has incorporated. Staff also requested volunteers from the TCC to help in evaluating scoring applications in June. The screening and scoring criteria are similar to those of the previous STIP cycles, and they can be found in the call for project document in attachment B. The screening criteria include that candidate projects must submit a draft project study report, or PSR equivalent, along with the application in June, and also the final version should be submitted to the authority no later than October 2nd. The requested STIP funding must be for periods of fiscal year 27-28 and fiscal year 28-29. Project phases must be fully funded with the requested STIP funds, and the current STIP projects that are program cannot seek additional STIP funding for the same phase. Projects must solve an existing problem related to safety, capacity, and/or operations. The requested STIP funds must be for capital improvements and must be at least $1 million. The requested funding can be used for environmental clearance, right-of-way design and construction. Roadway projects must be for roadways with classification above collector roads. And then, since STIP funds are federalized, project sponsor must be willing to go through Caltrans local assistance for the federal aid process. And then, as with previous STIP cycles, there are separate applications for transit and roadway projects, but they will be evaluated using the same scoring criteria of safety, system productivity, congestion relief, strategic expansion, ability to meet SB 375 goals of greenhouse gas reduction, and also whether the project is a Measure J project. Measure J projects are those that are listed in the strategic plan, and also projects that are in the current Transportation for Livable Communities, TLC, and pedestrian, bicycle, and trail facility, the PBTF program. The projects are awarded an automatic 20 points out of 100, and the 20-point advantage is to help authority and the local jurisdiction advance and deliver our Measure J portfolio of projects. In terms of schedule, the applications are due on June 16th. The TCC evaluation subcommittee will be convening in late June to score the applications. Staff will then bring the ranked project list to the full TCC in July. In August, the CTC should be approving their 2024 STIP estimates with county share information. And then staff will then bring the recommendation for the 2024 STIP programming to the APC and authority in September for approval. And that will allow us to submit our project priorities to MTC in October. So in summary, staff seeks approval for the 2024 STIP call for project screening and your approval of the screening and scoring criteria. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Kelly.
Stephanie, thank you for the presentation. Is a local match required or advised?
No, there's a scoring criteria that gives you extra points if you have other secure funding, but it's not required.
It's not required. Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other board members? Go out for public comments. Do anyone wishing to address the board, please use your virtual hand or put in a speaker card.
Verbal or written public comments.
No written and no one in the room. Okay, I would entertain a motion.
So move as presented. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Noah, by Andrich, and second by Carlson. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows,
Yes.
Commissioner Noack,
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce,
Yes.
Commissioner Stepper,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Commissioner Xavier,
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnrich.
Aye.
Chair Glover.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Haskew absent.
Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda this evening is the informational item that will be presented by Hasham to provide an update on Regional Measure 3. Welcome. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. See. Technical difficulty. Thank you, Terry Ann. All right, now we can move the slides. As you know, RM3 was approved by the voters in 2018. It authorized increasing the bridge tolls on the all seven bridges except for the Golden Gate. And two of the increases already happened. It's estimated to generate about 5.5 billion over 25 years. Out of that 5.5 billion, 4.45 billion is slated to go to capital improvements. The remaining 1.1 billion is earmarked for operations for express buses, ferries, as well as the transfer terminal. As soon as the RM3 passed by the voters, there was a legal challenge to it. I'm glad to say that the lawsuit was finally dismissed by the MTC to start allocating funds to the various projects in the summer of this year. They just asked us to update our what they call initial project reports to understand what the cash flow needs are. They're trying to figure out whether they need to issue bonds. Due to the time when the RM3 was in litigation, all the tolls that they were collecting based on RM3 were put in an escrow account. And I believe they have about $500 million currently in the escrow account. Our fair share of that 5.5 billion, based on how much
Contra Costa residents pay is about $1 billion. We pay currently 18% of all bridge tolls. As you can see in this colorful pie chart, these are all the agencies that are slated to receive direct allocations from RFP. Contra Costa is shown by the blue colors here. About 8% of the 4.4 billion will come to Contra Costa, or $360 million in direct allocations. Although this is far from our fair share, it's actually a huge improvement from the original proposal that was floating when they were discussing the RFP. Your executive director and commissioners spent a lot of time in Sacramento lobbying to increase our share. And they were successful in at least getting us $135 million more. There are 7 projects in Contra Costa that are slated to receive RM3 funds, totaling the $360 million, as you can see in this table. Those 7 projects were actually expanded into 18 more specific projects that we worked with our partners on, as you can see in the slide. We also included this as an attachment to the staff report, attachment A. For example, on the I-680 interchange, that project was broken into 2 separate projects. One for the interchange itself, and the other one is to do a study to connect the trails, the trail and the Air Force Trail near the interchange. The same thing with the East Contra Costa County Transit Center that was broken down into 2 projects. One is to provide the connection, the pedestrian bicycle connection to the transit center, which was the McCollum Trail. The rest is the transit center itself. There are several general categories, regional programs, basically, or categories in RM3. As you can see in the first column in this table, this includes the Bay Area Corridor Express Lanes, the Bay Trail Safe Routes to Transit, the Ferry Enhancement Program, Capital Corridor, the North Bay Transit Access Improvements, and the AC. We are targeting these regional categories to some funding for the projects that you see in the second column, like the northbound express lane on 680, the Hercules Intermodal Station from Capital Corridor, some money for the San Pablo Avenue bus rapid improvements, Contra Costa County from AC Transit. It's not going to be an easy task. Those sponsors basically have their own plans for that money. So it's going to take a lot of lobbying from staff as well as you commissioners to some of this funding. If we're successful, we could get up to $280 million on top of the $360 million that's directly allocated to CCTA to bring us closer to our version. In terms of the operation, as I mentioned, there is 1.1 billion slated for operations, including regional express buses as well as ferry enhancement programs. We are trying to get funding from these 2 categories for projects such as the I-680 express bus service, service on I-80 as well as for the Richmond ferry service, and hopefully freeing up some of the Measure J to do other stuff with on the Richmond ferry service. So over 25 years, we potentially could get up to 273 million. That's definitely a target. There is no guarantee we'll be able to get that, but that's what we're targeting from the This is just a quick status update on all the 18 projects you saw on the previous slides. The ones that are highlighted in blue, in blue, ones that are currently fully funded and will be moving forward. It still have some significant funding shortfalls on them. So we need to compete for state and federal monies to get them funded. However, RM3 will allow us to advance them to the next stage, like we're doing with the 684. We're using RM3 to advance the design. It will also provide us the required match for many of the federal and state money. The Richmond San Rafael Bridge, there is a category that's jointly sponsored by BATA and CCTA. $75 million in that category. We are working with Richmond, City of Richmond, with WICTAC, basically to figure out which specific improvements we want to do with that money. But the list you see on this slide is preliminary. These are the general categories where we want to split that $75 million. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Board Member Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you, Hisham, for the presentation. I'm still trying to digest all of this, and it's a little complicated, so it's going to take some time. For the I-80 corridor transit improvements, it says AC Transit. Will these funds go only to AC Transit, or will it actually be improving the corridor on which AC Transit travels?
So for that category, there is some money slated. AC Transit. We talked to AC Transit. Their plan is to use some of the money, at least half of it, for BRT service. The other half was planned to be AT Express bus service.
Okay, and then some of the money for WestCat would be for bus acquisition.
For WestCat, 5 million, I believe, is for bus acquisition, and the remainder.
Okay, and another question, I don't know if you can answer that, and this is that RM3 was passed several years ago. So do we have an idea how it's doing in terms of funding? Is it on track with the measure that was passed? Is it doing better or worse?
I don't have that information. I suspect with the pandemic, things may not. But I'm just speculating.
And I will note that it does seem now like the traffic is just as bad as it was pre-pandemic, and maybe it's even getting worse with lots of people traveling over bridges at all times of the day, including weekends and not just commute. So we may end up getting what they actually projected. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Stepper.
Yeah, thank you, Hisham. So they've collected about $500 million. 500 million is what you said today. Of that, how are they going back on how much of the 360 million we expect at this point? 257 million. We expect in this round of funding. What are they setting aside as? Is it a percentage, or how are they coming up with?
Thank you for the question. It's actually based on readiness. I suspect MTC is going to have to issue when they need it on top of the 500 they collected. Although they collected 500, I think they approved letters of no prejudice, where basically it allowed us to spend our own money while maintaining our ability to be reimbursed when RM3 cleared the legal challenge.
Okay, so the bottom line is we don't know of our projects that we've split up now. We don't know what we're going to expect to get at what point in time.
The time as part of the initial project reports, we basically gonna collect that information from all the sponsors. They have at hand how many bonds satisfy basically the schedules. So they will make the money available when the projects are the plan.
Okay, so what are they defining? How do you think they're defining what's ready?
It means when you need it, for example, to start your design phase, or when you need the money to start construction.
Okay, so it's not quote shovel ready, which means you might have already designed it. Will they do
That's-
those as a higher priority?
Sure, I mean, I think, yes, projects that are proceeding construction will definitely have higher priority.
So the reason why I'm asking is that we ought to know that really well. And the reason why, as from a staff point of view, we ought to know it well, because we should then be positioning ourselves to figure out if this has a higher priority versus this in terms of readiness, then what can we do to get our products to those ready state to be higher on the list and relative to when we can do them. But it'd be good to know all of that so that we are saying, yep, ours is in, this is our priority. And again, I think for the board and for the constituency, so we can tell people this is where we're at. So.
Can I just maybe chime in really quick? Sorry. So we have been doing that. I know we've been meeting with staff. I've been talking with Andy Vermeer. We've been talking with Alex Bockelman in terms of like, okay, this is where our priorities are. This is what we're trying. This is where we want to be funded. In fact, we're going to be setting up a meeting with commissioners with Andy Vermeer here pretty soon, just to reinforce that this is what we want out of RM3 and this is when we want it. I think when we talk with MTC, they just don't know. I think the questions that we're asking them and pushing, I mean, they're getting it from all angles. We had a deep discussion with MTC relative to RM3 on at one of our Bay Area County Transportation Authority meetings with all the executive directors. And MTC staff, I think, is just, they're not giving us any answers. They're just collecting all this information, as like Hisham is mentioning, they're collecting all this information. And I think we're hoping to know more in the next like month or two in terms of like what the process is going to be, how are the allocations going to be made. So a lot of the MTC staff is just not able to even answer the questions that we're even asking at this point, because they're trying to they're still trying to get their arms wrapped around what the need is, what the demand is, and then they can, and how to respond to a lot of these priority questions that we all have.
But that sounds good. Obviously, what it means is we need to be as close as we can, and also to make sure our two representatives are well informed to keep us all on the same page. You know, mathematically, they're supposed to be collecting an average 180 million a year, right? Just simple dollars, not present day. So, you know, it'd be interesting if people they have a list of priorities, that the determination to, I'm not a big fan of bonds because we'll lose. It's just not worth it. It only takes 7.5 years to save in cash what it actually cost you for a 20-25 year bond. So we're already almost 5 years into that if they hold off, pay a little bit, I mean, you can end up doing this as a cash because we have this artificial, we have to hold the money. We got the money, we got some interest on it. So it's worth, you know, pushing that narrative unless everybody just wants all their money up front, which is really, it just sounds chaotic to me. And I realize we're advocating, but it also reveals that there wasn't a clear process laid out in the original scope.
I think just to indicate, a good portion of that 500 in escrow are accommodated by letters of no prejudice. So a significant portion of it is already allocated. And my bet is that those are probably going to take priority, and therefore the need for the bonding on that. One, they expected to get more, it hit, right? So then, so people that were expecting projects over the last 4 years, the cash hasn't been there. And therefore, I think the need for bonding is a little bit there, and that's going to be discussed. But I just want to reiterate what Tim said. We're expecting the vote to take the money out of escrow. It's occurred. And then next steps will be starting to allocate I think we expect that this summer, but
Yeah.
there is, I think, 300 million or something on letters of no prejudice. I can't remember the exact number.
There's,
So
there's 500 million.
oh, it may be, yeah.
There's 500 million in escrow and there's 500 million of letter of no
There's,
prejudice.
yeah,
So it's fully committed.
The current revenue in
Yeah.
the bank.
you're not fighting for,
Pull some money out for coverage.
yeah, and because of the delay in getting those funds from COVID, they're likely gonna have to do a bit of bonding, I think, and that's why they're getting all these, IPRs, I guess they call them, which I've finally figured out that acronym, but,
But good to know that it's all committed. Like, we're sitting here listening, you guys happen to know, and now it comes out. Oh, by the way, it's fully committed. That
My
changes-
apologies.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Wasn't clear,
Boom,
yeah.
boom, boom. People listening to this, they're all excited, and now they're,
And just to be clear, I mean, we have 2 letter of no prejudice
Right.
that CCTA has. We have one from McCollum for 11. And then and maybe depending on what happens there, yeah, in terms of the next item. And then the other one is for 684 interchange. That's the other letter of no prejudice. Yeah.
Any other members? Terry Ann, I'll look to you to see if we have any public comments. Anyone wishing to speak, please raise your virtual hand.
Like no virtual or written public comment.
Okay, and no one in the room. Right, so this was an informational item. There's no action involved. But of letters of no prejudice, we will move to our next item. Item which is an action item presented by Ivan Ramirez requesting to submit a regional measure 3 letter of no prejudice for State Route 4, McCollum Bike and Trail pedestrian overcrossing project. Mr. Ramirez.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ivan Ramirez, and I'm the Director of Construction for the Authority. And this is an action item. And it's in regards to, as stated previously, a letter of no prejudice for a SR4 McCollum pedestrian overcrossing. So let me give you a little bit of background regarding this project. On the right side, you get a high view of the pedestrian overcrossing, how it's going to be looking ultimately with the green lines, and you can see some of the progress, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But going back, the board awarded the construction contract on September 15, 2021 to Albanese, who's a contractor working over there right now. We did not give the notice to proceed until March 14th of 2022. It had a total of 200 working days. And we have encountered several issues in the project, and I'm going to go over them in a few minutes. And right there, I'm displaying the approved resolution to award the contract 2141P, where we have the allocation provided to the contract with a total amount of $8.6 million. So prior to all these activities, of course, we went to MTC, and we requested a letter of no prejudice for $11 million. That's to bring us to construction. That was the only way we could fund the project. So that was the first step we took to allow us to go to construction. And this is, for those that are not familiar, this is the location of the project. It's in East County, and it's between Lone Tree Way and Sand Creek Road. And it's going to connect the McCollum Trail over Highway 4. So these are some of the things that we have encountered that have not only impacted the budget, but also have impacted the duration of the project. One of them has to do with a garlic field, that it was a temporary construction easement. Unfortunately, when we got to the field, the farmer had indeed farmed it and planted garlic. And on top of that, there was a lot of irrigation performed. So we had to deal with that issue right away. There was also an issue with getting through the first lane closures through the Caltrans system. We also had out of all things, nesting with the birds. We also encountered a issue with the design, and that's number 4 there with deck grades. And also, as you can imagine, the weather has had significant impact on the project. So this orange line that I'm showing there, that's a temporary construction easement. And by the way, we have several temporary construction easements in the project. And we have had issues with them because as the project has been delayed, those temporary construction easements have expired. And we have had to be very innovative and creative how we are dealing with those. But nonetheless, we have managed to deal with them up to this point, and the project continues. So yeah, so there it is. That's exactly where the bridge is supposed to go, is cutting across that square diagonally to cross the freeway. And obviously the contractor couldn't progress with the work. And it was very, very wet, so the irrigation. Again, the other issue that came up was a lane closure system. Caltrans as a system is, as you can see here, there's a website, and you have to create credentials, and you have to be able to log in and put the request. A lot of things can go wrong when it's your first time to do it on the project, and that's indeed what happened to us. So we couldn't, even though we had scheduled the work and we were scheduling to close the freeway, we couldn't do it because we never got permission. So that created other delays. An interesting issue as well. Right at the beginning of the project, we had a nesting of the kilder. I'm not sure if that's a bird, I think it is. And as you can see there, those are the eggs. That's smack in the middle of where the bridge is going to go. So we have a biology on site as is required by our environmental permits. We had to stop work in that location for, I think it was 38 days. And unfortunately, they never actually hatched. So we waited all that time and there were no, we didn't get the fruits of the bird's labor. So as you can see, some of these items are things that are completely out of our control. This is something that is related to the deck that I mentioned earlier, and I apologize for the photo here. It doesn't have good resolution, but imagine you are looking down into the bridge, and here we have a temporary structure, as you can see on the lower left. That's how we call that force work. And what ended up happening is that the way this normally works is the contractor builds it, but it doesn't build it to detail elevations, because that comes later. This is to get the work up there. As they progress, eventually they're going to adjust that false work so that it meets the exact elevations of that deck. So as we were progressing with the work, and you can see that they have already installed rebar, they have already installed forms. Well, we discovered that there was an error on the deck. Instead of having a super elevation this way, they had a super elevation the other way. And that's the extent of the deck, right? Because it doesn't happen fast. It happens slowly as you go down the deck. So the outcome of that, we had to confirm with the designer. The designer confirmed that was the issue. Then we had to, of course, find a solution. Time is going on. The contractor was ready to move. Ultimately, what we ended up doing is we had to jack the bridge up. And then as we brought it back down, then we changed the elevation. And that's what we ultimately did to address that vertical elevation. But unfortunately, as you can see here, this plywood here, that's normally something we don't put in false work. False work is supposed to be somewhat rigid, but not entirely rigid, so that it's allowed to move. And we try to put those plywoods in there to kind of keep it more rigid. But unfortunately, as it was coming down, the entire false work did shift. So that created another issue, because now the bridge is out of alignment. And again, we have to start with the designer. How do we fix it? And a lot of precautions were taken, but unfortunately, given the fact that this is not rigid, it did move. And here on this picture here, this is the jacks that we put along the lower beam again to raise it and then bring it back down and change that profile. And then the weather, you know, we've been hit significantly and I think it got compounded for us because we had those initial delays and then, you know, contractor couldn't move. And then of course, once the weather hits, then basically the contractor says, well, I wasn't supposed to be here now. The only reason I'm here is because you delay me. And therefore all these delays, you know, they're all on you. So we have given them 35 days so far, but I know that we're reviewing the requests that they have put on us. And I think that number will increase it. And again, this is another issue that is completely out of our control that we're mitigating in the field. So this is again an overview of the project. The green line is where the pedestrian overcrossing is going to be. This over here is field, it's already there. This over here is field, it's already there. Frame 1 goes over the freeway. Frame 2 is the one where we had our issues. And then there's another complicating piece of the work that's coming up, which is this loop here. It has a profile issue, but doesn't have profile issues, doesn't have any, but in order to construct it, it has very tight controls because we have a downslope, then we have cross slopes, and they're on a tight radius. So it presents a challenge for the contractor to build this. So we're trying to help them resolve, I guess, get a good plan so that he can get out of there and build it as best as we can with the ADA requirements met and so on. So in summary, you know, the original completion date was December 22. Currently, the completion date is September 30th, 2023. We are working with the contractor to bring that date back. Obviously, we want to be done as soon as possible. We have, the contractor have submitted 4 TIAs. We have dealt with the first 3. Number 4 is the one where a lot of time extension will be given to the contractor. So we are ready to talk about in detail about the additional money, how we're going to pay the contractor. We'll come back to you in June of 2023. So right now, what we're asking you to do is to authorize resolution 2113P, which will authorize submittal of a letter of no prejudice for an additional $2 million for construction services. And one of the things I do want to say is that we have had some issues with some of our contractors. I think that there are certain tendencies to, how can I say, take advantage of the issues that they come up. So we are looking at finding a way to pre-qualify our contractors in the future, because we know that there are some very good ones out there and we like working with them and they do a good job for us. So if there's any way to do that, we're going to look into that, you know, to do it in a legally acceptable way. And the other thing I will say is that we have to continue to push alternative delivery because I think that a lot of the issues that, you know, manifest themselves during the construction phase have a great probability of weeding them out when we're in the design phase with the contractor working a lot with us. And on top of that, you already selected a contractor that you like working with, because that's perfectly legal during the alternative delivery method. So with that, I'm open to any questions.
Okay.
And just with the now completion date going to September 23, do we think the 2 million is sufficient for any? Do we anticipate some potential other problems, or do we think that's going to cover it?
We are requesting $2 million to deal with the issues that we have faced so far.
So far,
You know, like you saw with that detail with the deck being what it was, I can't predict there's another issue out there.
okay.
Mr. Armour.
Well, no, go ahead, Karen.
Just a simple follow-up for your last comment. You said, and since they'd already selected a contractor, that we had some other pressures, but I thought they are the contractor.
Sorry, I might have misspoken. What I meant to say is the alternative delivery method. When you're working with a contractor, those get pre-selected on qualifications and so on. So it's easy, you know, you're already working with a contractor that you know is going, well, I think you have a good indication that it's going to perform the level one, as opposed to having the low bid, right? The low bid environment, you get whoever the low bid is,
No.
period.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Andre.
Ivan, I always have to say, if you're sitting in the seat, you're here because you have solutions. But it's going to cost us. So I get that, and I appreciate your expertise of being able to come in, figure it out. It seems, and this is purely a comment, it seems that in hindsight now, after the San Ramon experience of doing the crossing, which is actually not quite the same spans, because actually it's probably similar, that design build, yeah, is a good solution. This might be our lesson for a project of this scale in the future, it would seem. I think you might agree on that. But I think Sue Nowak asked the question we all probably sit here is, okay, we get it, it's solved. But your bottom line is, as you're saying, is you believe that at the $2 million, this from everything that you know pretty much deals with this. This should help, hopefully be it. We'll get an update, but the fact is there should be sufficient funds to cover the issues that you foresee.
That is correct. Okay. What I can tell you is that we have seen a market improvement with the contractor in the last few weeks, where they're really performing, and it seems like they're motivated to get the
And the
work done.
weather is good,
So,
yeah.
but again, some of the things that I showed in my presentation, I mean, we couldn't have predicted those to happen.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So it's hard. And that's the thing about construction, right? It comes from all over the place. But going to your earlier point, yes, we need to continue to push for alternative delivery. And that includes working on the state highway system, because that's this restriction that we have, right?
Yep.
Over there up on your canyon, we don't have such
No,
restrictions.
it's all local.
So we have to continue to voice that to our representatives in the legislation.
Okay, well, thank you. And I appreciate your expertise in helping us solve this.
Hey, any other Commissioner Thorpe?
Yes, just so I'm clear, the 2 million is for what you're dealing with now, not for the future.
That's correct, but keep in mind that there is still, you remember when I showed the original allotment, there was a contingency that you gave us to deal with.
No, I mean, there could be other issues that arise. This is not part of that. The $2 million is for what you have experienced
That's
up
right.
to this point.
That's correct.
If there are other delays and challenges in the future, you would then have to come back and ask for additional money
Well, I still have a little bit of that contingency left originally, so I might be able
to work
to,
with that.
but it's very tight. It might be, there's a possibility. I don't foresee it right now, but I don't want to commit to you telling you I won't come back again.
Right, some people use the word foresee, and I understood this is just for now. This could change tomorrow.
That's correct.
Okay.
Other commissioners or members? Okay, do we have any public comments? Anyone's out there, raise your virtual hand.
Written or verbal public comment.
Okay, thank you. So I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve that we go forward with the State Florida Malacca Bike Trail and overcrossing project and the additional funds.
Second.
Okay, motion by Stepper, second by Aldrich. Terry Ann, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce,
Yes.
Commissioner Stepper,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Commissioner Xavier,
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnrich,
Aye.
Chair Glover.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Haskew absent.
Our next item is a informational item that will be presented by Matt Kelly to provide an update on the action plan and routes of regional significance on the countywide transportation plan. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Glover. Good evening, Authority Board members. My name is Matt Kelly. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the Authority. I'm here tonight to present an informational item on the action plans for routes. Make sure that action plans for routes of regional significance, as well as the countywide transportation plan. As most of you are members of the regional transportation planning committees. You may recognize us from our many trips to both your TAC and policy board meetings. As the RTPCs are where the action plan development takes place. What we're kind of memorializing tonight is that all 5 action plans have been completed and approved by the RTPCs and forwarded to CCTA for inclusion in the countywide transportation plan, which I'll get into a little bit later. But I'm going to have Tarina Wilson here representing our on-call planning consultant PlaceWorks to provide an overview of those action plans and highlight what is different about these action plans and what each of your action plans contains. And then we'll get into a little bit of the countywide transportation plan. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it's shared. We can start. You want to advance?
Thanks, Matt, and good evening, Chair Glover and board. I'm honestly giddy to be here, which might not happen very often, but I am so excited that we're at this meeting and we have all 5 action plans ready to present to you. Many of you have seen this presentation, so I'm going to try to be as brief as I possibly can. But real quickly go over what the actual project is. As many of you know, it's a joint update of 5 action plans, 1 for each of your subregions. And we began this work in 2021. So we've been working on this for about 2 years now. All of these plans are going to roll up and culminate into now the update of your countywide transportation plan. So this is a huge foundational effort that we've gone through. Your CCTA staff and your consultant staff have worked really hard on all of that. As the board has professed and CCTA is working on, we wanted to make sure that all of the action plans include really big and bold ideas to transform the transportation network. And to do this in the action plans, we have various new emphases, and that includes the incorporation of vehicle miles traveled. It includes the comprehensive multimodal approach to the transportation network. And it also includes a lot of non-modal topics, which were not in your action plans previously. And that includes equity, safety, and climate change. And on top of that, we wanted to make sure that we built on the 2020 transportation expenditure plan, specifically because that document outlined a lot of innovation and technology that we thought was really important to your entire network. And so it's included in all 5 of the action plans. On top of that, we've ensured that the approach that we took is holistic and it's, again, multimodal. And we also looked at integrated corridor management. So we're not just looking at one corridor at a time. We want to know how everything interacts with one another. As I'm sure that you know, your action plans implement your Measure J growth management program. What they do is they talk about the transportation issues that exist today. They establish quantitative service objectives so we can measure progress over time. They identify routes of regional significance for each of the subregions. They also provide growth management program compliance metrics. And they also, so the MTSOs and the RTOs, that's what we have been, those are your quantitative service objectives. So in your past action plans, these were called MTSOs. They're now renamed to RTOs, regional transportation objectives. And the reason for that is because we included the non-modal topic. So we could no longer say multimodal transportation service objectives, because as you see on the bottom, again, we're including safety, climate change, equity, and innovation and technology, which are obviously not modal topics. So again, your RTOs are the quantitative service objectives. I'm going to go over those a little bit in another slide. I'm going to quickly go over the public outreach that we did. We have a project webpage that is still live. And on that project webpage, you can see all 5 of the draft action plans. We did a countywide online survey. We did a total of 13 pop-up events. There were 2 in each subregion. One of them, the reason that there's 13 is that one of them had to be conducted twice because there was a weather cancellation at the last minute that the consultants didn't hear about. So we repeated, but it was a great time and both events were really successful. We also did 6 virtual workshops, and with all of this, 704 comments. And, you know, I do public outreach across the Bay Area for a lot of different projects, and I was truly impressed with the level of outreach and actual feedback that we got. And it was substantive, and it really helped us in the action plan update process. So essentially what we heard was improvements to the entire network. Nothing was spared, as I don't think you would think there would be. So there was a lot of comments about improvements to BART, what we usually hear: access, frequency, safety, cleanliness. A lot of improvements to the active transportation network. That mainly had to do with the safety of the network, specifically over freeway crossings and water access as well. So our existing creeks being able to recreate nearby. There were also improvements to streetlights, lighting on trails. Again, that's safety improvements to the active transportation network. There were infrastructure improvements to the routes of regional significance, also improved ADA accessibility and general traffic calming solutions everywhere, but specifically around schools. I'm going to briefly go over the action plan contents. One of the big push for these updates is to make sure that all of the action plans were really similar to one another. So previously, the action plans were really different. They had some, you couldn't tell that they were trying to accomplish the same thing until you started reading them. And so now we've made sure that the outline of the documents is as identical as we possibly could get it. As you'll see on the slide, there's 2 different outlines. So the West, Central, and East action plans all have the same outline. And then the La Miranda and Tri-Valley action plans have the same outline. The only reason for this is that La Miranda and Tri-Valley, they do not have MTC designated equity priority communities. So this means that those 2 action plans do not have the equity chapter, but they're otherwise identical in terms of chapters. However, each subregion had their own authority to set goals, policies, targets for each of their quantified objectives and actions. So there is still a lot of, a personal touch to each of these. Now, I'm getting back here to the RTOs. Again, these are the quantitative objectives. Each action plan includes the same number of RTOs for each of the topics, and that's what you see on the screen. So each of them has 5 RTOs related to transit, 3 related to active transportation, 4 for roadways, 3 for safety, 5 for equity, but again, this is only in West, Central, and East sub-counties, 5 for climate change, and then 1 for innovation and technology. I want to focus on that one for just a second longer. The only reason there's only 1 for this one, even though it's a huge priority for CCTA, is because the farther that we dove into, more RTOs, the more we realize that we're currently living innovation and technology change. And so it was really hard to come up with quantified objectives for a lot of the initiatives that CCTA has going on right now. So instead of creating a bunch of RTOs, instead what we did is we created really actionable actions in each of the action plans to make sure that in the next update and then the time between then, we're really looking at various components of innovation and technology in the transportation network. So we're hoping next time there's an update that number is going to be far higher. Of the number of actions in each of the action plans. This is to help demonstrate the fact that we, obviously it's important to maintain our roadways. Our buses use our roadways. We've got sidewalks along our roadways, but it's not our number 1 concern, which has been the case in the past action plans. So you can see here that transit and active transportation modes, they're a very high priority, a little bit over the roadways. And then our 4 non-modal topics, we also have funding in there as part of our chapters 11 and 12. So all of these actions, you can see how the priorities in the action plans have been shifting over time. Overview of the process of action plan adoption. These all went to the RTPC tax. We've been working with them very closely throughout the past 2 years. They ended up forwarding all of the action plans over to their policy boards, and these have been forwarded on to you. And so we've had many, many meetings of approvals and nods that this was ready for you to take a look at and hear about tonight. And then what happens now is we're going to be working on the CTP, which Matt's going to talk about in just a moment. After that's done, we do step 6, which is that the CTP is done and the action plans are going to go back to the RTPC boards for a formal actual adoption. And I'll go.
Thanks, Tarina. So now on to the CTP. As Tarina mentioned, the 5 action plans kind of lay the foundation for the CTP and really build off of those documents. So I'm not going to get too much into the scope tonight because we do plan on coming back to you in the coming months with a detailed scope, schedule, and we're going to be kind of really engaging you in discussion to help shape the scope of the countywide plan. But just to give you an idea, we expect it to be adopted in the next year or two, probably around 18 months. We plan to build off the existing planning efforts. You've heard about the action plans, but also the 2020 transportation expenditure plan, the existing 2017 CTP. The CTPL is our project database. So we've got access to literally thousands of projects that have been proposed in there that we can draw from. And then all the studies that are kind of ongoing right now at CCTA, we plan to pull from those as they progress. One of the main goals, as Tarina mentioned early on, is really to modernize and expand patient network in Contra Costa County, make it usable for today's users as well as the future users. One thing we have identified is that we will be preparing an EIR concurrently with the development of the transportation plan. So here's just kind of a flow chart that shows you how we have things set up. So we've got 3 main tracks. The middle track is just developing the CTP, but with the stakeholders on the left providing constant input and EIR on the right that is really assessing the CTP and the impacts. One item we plan on moving forward with right away, or at least initially, as the second item in the middle, policy papers on key topics. So there's a lot of kind of new and emerging items that we want to be included in this transportation plan, but we may not know a lot about those items right now today. So what we plan on doing in the next couple of months is having some of our consultants prepare these policy papers that really help inform us, what we need to know before we can even include some of these topics in the countywide transportation plan. So this will be the first step to really drill down on some of these items. This is not a exhaustive or a final list. These are just some ideas we've thrown on paper. So this list may change over time, but we plan on getting going at least on several of these very soon. So as Tarina mentioned, we did a lot of public outreach with the action plans. We plan on doing even more with the countywide plan. It will be coordinated with Lindsay and her team because we have a lot of ongoing efforts and we don't want to go out to the public or the stakeholders for every single effort over and over. We want to coordinate a lot of those efforts. So you'll be seeing some really good engagement for this CTP as well as other authority efforts over the next several months. So we do have that first bullet, we do have a stakeholder group that we've been meeting with every 2 months that represent kind of the advocacy groups and the CBOs that do business in the county. So we've been meeting with those. We will continue to meet with those, but then we will be meeting with the general public, pop-up events, virtual events, and other types of events, and meeting, one-on-one meetings with our partners and other types of meetings, a task force and things. include, as you see in the bullets below. So our next steps, first bullet is where we're at tonight. So we're bringing it to you tonight. And like I said, we'll be coming back with a more detailed scope on the CTP. We wanted to wrap up the action plans tonight. And the plan will be going for the next 18 months or so, and will, like I said, include a lot of ongoing stakeholder engagement as well as engagement with you all. So tonight, like I said, it is an information item, but we'd be glad to take any input you might have on either the action plan process or where you'd like to see us going with the CTP, that we will be coming back discussions on the CTP. So thank you.
Who's comments?
Question, Matt, because when I was always here before, we always had transplants, Transpac, WITAC, SWAT, and now you've changed this to be Tri-Valley, which wasn't in the original plan. So this is just for this analysis that Tri-Valley and the southern part of Alameda becomes one group and La Miranda another. How did that happen?
Yeah, we didn't go into the nuances of the action plans and our RTPCs. So we do have 4 RTPCs,
Still.
SWAT, the ones you mentioned. However, when the TVTC was formed in the 90s, I believe, one thing they decided to do as part of their JPA was to participate in the action plan process. And they really recognized how much the Tri-Valley cities and the San Ramon Valley cities, are connected transportation wise. You can't ignore the 580, 680 junction down there in either county. So they decided back then to prepare an action plan for that. It's a study area, including part of SWAT and part of Alameda County, and then SWAT was basically divided into to give La Miranda their own action plan. So it's a little bit complicated in SWAT.
So you didn't redo the legal allocations that were set up in Measure C. This has been another part of it, and I can't disagree, of course, that we have so much in common with the Tri-Valley and San Ramon and Day.
And then they kind of step back for the countywide plan update. They do their own countywide plan in Alameda, but we invite them to participate if they want.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Other commissioners? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Stolz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice to see you, Matt and Tarina. You probably tired of seeing some of us, but I want to thank you, and I think this process that you laid out makes a lot of sense because I think it really worked at the RTPC level, and what I thought was particularly effective and powerful was the outreach you did and the check-ins you did with us at different junctures. So we weren't getting the final product at the last minute, but rather there were opportunities to provide input. And I'm very appreciative of how you listened and you actually incorporated what the RTPCs were saying and what the public was saying. So thank you for that, and look forward to doing the same thing on the county plan.
Commissioner Stepper, your light's still on. Okay. Any other members? Okay, I'm going to ask that we go out and see if we have any public comments.
No written or verbal public comment.
Okay, and is there any comments in the room? Seeing none, this is a informational item, so no action is required. Next on our agenda is associated committee reports. A committee report from Transpac, SWAT, and Westac is provided in your packet. Next on our agenda is board or staff comments. I, as the chair, would just like to say that early on, there was communication about representatives from MTC and staff meeting with Andy Vermeer. We're looking forward to that. One thing we are really looking to do is to make sure that we keep RM3 hold and that we deliver the projects that has been identified.
Thank you.
Any other?
I'll just add to that, that we have a MTC has a workshop this week, which will hopefully allow me to catch up a little bit quicker than wise. So that will be hopefully very helpful. That's on Wednesday and Thursday this coming week. So opportunity for Federal and I both to interact with all the other MTC measures and discussing these topics. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kelly.
Thank you. I just want to say, and I'm sure Tim will expand on this, we had Redefining Mobility Summit yesterday. I thought it was a great success. A lot of people came, some from abroad. There was a delegation from Japan. And as I looked around the room and I saw the discussions, and they ranged from everything from autonomous vehicles to aircraft that goes up and down, to the use of electricity and hydrogen, and even people talking about insurance. This whole idea of redefining mobility and autonomous vehicles is really accepted, and it's coming. It's really coming fast, and that was very, very exciting. I want to thank staff for all the hard work. I know it's tough to put this on every single year, but I really appreciate it, and I think the whole audience did as well. So thank you.
Arnott.
Ditto. It was really good. It was fun to be there. I had to leave in the middle of the day. The panels were great, just great enthusiasm. And I think one of the highlights was the high school kids, all their really cool inventions. And I know executive director is talking about doing some more incentivization based on the funding, because this year's corporate sponsorships were very, very strong and helping add to motivate those kids. And it's an opportunity for the designers, providers that were there to see their future employees there. So it was really well done.
Members, this time we would ask for our other representatives. Tim.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Redefine Mobility Summit was a huge success. Thank you to Lindsay and the staff for putting that together. It's a huge lift to really organize all of the speakers, as well as organize all the logistics, the signage, the demonstration zone, working with our partners. And it was a huge success. It was last year we sold out, this year we sold out. And I would even say sold out plus some. We keep on trying to squeeze more and more people in there as much as we possibly can. We actually got a lot of late requests to come and just come and do walk-ins. So we are getting a lot more people, a lot more interest into what we're doing. Got a lot of feedback. I mean, I know Lindsay heard a lot of feedback in terms of this was the best summit yet. And we had a lot of great comments, and topics and conversation and dialogue. Just as a refresher, we had a great international panel. We had actually 10 people from Japan actually come to the event. And it really reinforces the global recognition of CCTA and what we're doing. We had folks from Australia, and we also had someone from the Netherlands chime in virtually as part of the event. So all the comments I receive, everyone's really complimentary in terms of the strategies, and we're at the bleeding edge, we're at the cutting edge. I actually met with someone this morning, and he even said that in all of the agencies, he's a global leader, and he said that out of all the people he meets with, everyone kind of looks to CCTA to kind of steer the ship from a global and national perspective. So really great event. And got some really great VIP speakers. The demonstration zone was a huge success. We had all our partners out there. Aurora, Main Mobility, Gig, Beep, Glideways. I mean, it was a really one of the best demonstration zones yet, and a lot of great student participation as well. So yeah, thank you for the continued support to doing this. And next year will be our 9th annual, and soon we'll be on our 10th anniversary. Also exciting things going on is our shuttle launch down in Bishop Ranch. Unfortunately, we had some issues. We kind of moved things out by a week, but things are progressing nicely. We got everything dialed in. I think we're wrapping the second shuttle this week, and with our new Presto brand, and the shuttle launch will be on Monday. And this is like kicking it off Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5:30. Any of you can go down the Bishop Ranch and ride in the shuttle and look at the route. So it's really exciting. It's actually one of the first deployments for Beep, and Beep has done about 13 of these deployments across the country to do vehicle to infrastructure connectivity to the signal. So it's really cool to see how the vehicle stops at the signal. Usually the safety attendant will actually hit the green button to say proceed through the intersection. And in this particular case, the driver does not do that, or the safety attendant doesn't do that. It actually sees and knows when the light changes green, and it actually proceeds on its own through the intersection all by itself. So that's huge, very exciting. Also, this morning we had a sneak peek of the route. So a few of you are able to come and attend that. So that was also exciting to kind of see and ride in the route and get a sneak peek as well. Also from a national perspective, kind of building upon that, Chair Glover and I and Lindsay did our DC advocacy trip earlier in the month. And that was a huge success. We met with all our representatives, met with the agencies, met with USDOT, FTA, Federal Transit Administration, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. We also met with T&I committee. And you know what's really fascinating about going there and seeing this was actually a really great listening session for them. It was interesting on how they were asking us questions. Like usually we go to these things and it's like, this is what we're doing, this is our updates. We're kind of beyond that now. They already know what we're doing. They're like asking us questions about like, what are you seeing? What's the next steps? Where do you see the challenges? What are the policies that we need to implement to make this stuff successful, in terms of technology? So it just, again, reinforces, the national leadership that we have and the recognition that we have at a national level. It's really exciting. And so, and I mean, for example, we're pushing this national autonomous vehicle regulatory framework, and we literally sat with like, what was it, Lindsay? Like 8 NHTSA members, literally 8 NHTSA members across the table. And we're talking about how to set up a national framework, how to set up this demonstration site. And we're talking about, they're like asking us, well, what about this? And what about that? And we're like, well, have you thought about liability? Have you thought about this? And literally they're just scribbling down notes left and right, just, like, oh my God, this is like really good stuff. Like, and so it's amazing. Like we're like advisors, right, to them in terms of the work that we're doing. And we're leaders in this place. And we met with T&I committee and we were talking to them about, hey, these are some of the things that you need. I mean, you've got all this federal funding coming down the pipeline, and these are the challenges that we've been going through on these innovation grants, and it's like, and just simple things like standard reporting, right? And they're like writing it down. Standard, it's like, oh my God, seriously. And so like standard agreements, like just, I mean, right now, like on the Safe Streets for All grant, we got awarded this grant, and poor Hisham and Colin and Stephanie are negotiating in terms of what is the agreement actually going to look like, So just like having standard templates and agreements, and it's like, and especially with data, like if they want to see what outcomes are actually going to get out of this $1.2 trillion, then there needs to be consistent reporting so they can identify and see, how this money is going to move the needle in terms of outcomes. And so that was a conversation we had with the T&I committee. So really exciting stuff. Also, we found the USDOT store at USDOT. If you don't know this, there's a store in USDOT. So I bought a jacket, I bought a beanie, I bought an apron. What else did we buy? I bought a hat. Yeah, I actually bought a really cool USDOT United States flag hat that I will be wearing at 4th of July. Yeah, so it was, if you haven't seen, how many times have you been there? We never knew there was a store. And you walk into the store and there's literally like just dust settled everywhere. There's like nothing, no one ever goes to this store. So, and it's funny, we went in there with the Build America Bureau guy, and he's just like, he's also buying stuff. He's like, I haven't even been in here. Literally, it's open on Wednesdays from like 9 to 2. That's it. That's it. Wednesdays from 9 to 2. So anyways, we got really excited about that. And then just some other updates on the Gomentum Station front. And I haven't had a chance to brief some of you, but literally on Monday, we got another switch in leadership at AAA. So we were working with Jason Haight. Now we're working with Portia Manaub. And so she came from VP of strategy. And so there's a lot of education now with her in terms of kind of working on this business concept to kind of move Gomentum forward. So at least at this point, we had a meeting with the Gomentum Station Ad Hoc Committee, and we're essentially just moving forward with our current master agreement and just let it renew annually. In the meantime, as we strategize with AAA on kind of the future structure of Gomentum Station with AAA, and really just understanding if, are they in or are they out, and so that's kind of where we're at right now in terms of the Gomentum Station. Also had a really cool trip down to San Jose last week, met with Archer. They actually was a presenter at Redefine Mobility Summit on urban air mobility. And that was really interesting. They're targeting a complete network of urban air mobility at all the small general aviation airports in the Bay Area. And so Concord, Byron, or Buchanan Airport, Byron Airport. So by end of next year, they will get certified for this vehicle. It's manned, it's not unmanned. There's actually a pilot in it, but it's an electric vehicle, vertical takeoff landing vehicle. And they're targeting a complete network of general aviation, and their business model is actually $4 to $5 per mile, which is actually fairly competitive to like an Uber or a Lyft. So I can literally drive to Buchanan Airport, and for, 20 miles, so $100, I can go to SFO Airport, and it's a 4-seater, so it's fairly competitive to, like, I don't know if you take an Uber from here to SFO, but that's typically about $75 or so. So it's fairly comparable. And so it's really interesting to kind of see that progress. We also talked to them about looking at putting one of these vertiports, as they call it, at Bishop Ranch, because we're talking to the Shared Mobility Hub at Bollinger Canyon. So we're thinking about putting a vertiport there at Bishop Ranch as kind of a first one outside of a general aviation airport. So we're talking about that as well. Okay, and then lastly, one more update. We've launched our means-based fares program out in East Contra Costa County. So this is a really important milestone for accessible transportation, working with the Contra Costa Crisis Center. So this is the first kind of operational deployment that we've done out of the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan. So we're going to be capturing data, understanding what the success is, and how we're going to expand that across Contra Costa County. And that's really to help people of low income and people to get into paratransit and into the system. And right now we're targeting the pilot in East Contra Costa County with Tri-Delta Transit. They've been a great partner with Rashidi Barnes as the CEO. So more to come on that, but that's just a really exciting milestone to kind of, go from, if you think about it, the progress we've had the study, we've done implementation, we got 4 pilot projects. So, I know there's been a lot of criticism over the last decade or 2 decades that there's never been any progress, but we're showing a lot of progress now in the accessible transportation front. And then lastly, I want to introduce a new staff member. So Emily Owen. So she is our new administrative assistant, and she has a lot of great experience in the county. We actually stole her from Mark DeSaulnier. She used to work for and so anyway, so she used to work at Congressman McNerney's office and then DeSaulnier's office. So she's got a lot of really great, just local experience about Contra Costa County. So Emily, you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Thank you, Tim. Good evening. As Tim mentioned, I have 8 years working locally in the district here. Before that, working for the city of Antioch for about 8 years at the water park, lifeguard, and managing the water park. Personally, I was raised in Antioch, lived in Antioch about 3+ years. I moved to Brentwood a few years ago.
Wish you could walk there.
Yeah. So still spend a ton of time in Antioch. Yeah. Personally, hobbies, I really enjoy hiking, all the wonderful parks, especially after all the rain, the super bloom and the green hills, you just can't get enough of it. Traveling, I really enjoy traveling, get out as much as I can internationally, domestically, Disneyland. So I really enjoy, traveling and spending time with family and friends in my free time. And then every Sunday during football season, watching the Steelers. So yeah, good stuff.
We won't hold that against you.
Well, great, and welcome to the CCTA family.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Wife likes the Steelers, so you'll get along with her. That's safe. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate one more time. So next Monday, 10 a.m., right, Lindsay? 10 a.m. next Monday, shuttle launch. We're doing a huge press event, press release. I think Mark's coming, right? No? Oh, I thought you said Mark was coming. Okay, never mind. But a lot of great VIPs, including all of you. And it should be a really great, positive, exciting event. So hopefully you can make it next Monday at 10 a.m. I think that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to reiterate how proud I was being in DC. And when we walked in, they knew CCTA had arrived. So it's Lindsay and Tim that did an outstanding job with presentations, and it was really, an honor to be there and to watch the reactions of individuals looking for our knowledge base on how things get done. So, all right.
If I could make one comment.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I thought it was just so exciting to be there yesterday and to see that Archer mobility in the air. And the reason you could do it I was going to add to Bishop Ranch, because I remember when I used to have my office there, noise was always an issue. This runs on 12 electric motors. It's amazing.
Oh, great. Okay, so the calendars is in your packet, and we have concluded our business here tonight. We are adjourned.
Thank you.